It is I, the elevated individual, your main man, return to you. And now I'm going to be talking about playing against type. Now, when you play against type, particularly when you're playing an exotic alien species. Yes, I'm talking about elves and dwarves and ogres. They're aliens. We don't have them. They don't exist. They're aliens. They're extra existential too. Okay, that's not a word. But what is a word is believability. Now, I had a lot of comments from people with this. Oh, I had this idea, and my character did this and this. Some of them are horrible. Okay, some of them are horrible. The comments and the people that send me ideas and so forth. Now, it's not. I'm not trying to knock you, because you're trying to learn. You're trying to say, okay, and as long as you're always trying to work at getting better, you'll get better. Your ideas aren't always going to be the best. They're just not, and that's okay, because you got to work through bad stuff sometimes. And as you get older, you learn and you get the ability to strain these things a little bit better. But when you play a character against type to the point it is no longer that type, that's a problem. And people do that a lot. They go, oh, well, I saw everybody in the world played elves with long swords and with shields and with some chainmail armor, and they played dwarves with warhammers and battle axes and plate mail and a steel shield, or 2 axes of chainmail. And they played every ogre was or every orc, half orc was a barbarian with a surly attitude whose mother got raped, and he has a big giant 2-bladed axe, and it's all around the world the same song. You know. It's always the same thing over and over again with these kind of deals, and people get sick of that. They go, I don't want to be a drow elf with 2 scimitars and a panther. I don't want to do that because I've seen it so many times. So they look, and the thing is, if you want to be a drow elf with 2 scimitars and a panther, you just take the panther out and take out the 2 scimitars, and then don't fight with 2 weapons, and then give him like a pole arm. Give him a bunch of shurikens or darts or composite longbow. Give him something that's different to use as a primary weapon. Give him a background that's different. Give him a personality that's different. But it doesn't mean that you'll be playing him in a way that nobody in the world will buy. You're going to drow. Come on, dude. Come on now. There has to be certain traits when you're playing a character type that are believable. Like, oh, I believe that was an elf. Because I could play, I could take 2 characters, right, and play them both identical. They could have the exact same psychological makeup. They could be the exact same character. However, my description to you on one of them might be that I was a ogre, and the other one might be that I was a gnome. They should not be played the same way. They should be inherently different in a whole bunch of ways. But I could play them exactly the same. What am I doing here? Where am I making a mistake? Because I am. Because after all, I've just told you, I have one character. I played him in 2 different bodies. Of course, I haven't done that, but hopefully that helps to illustrate the point of, well, this character makes sense for a stretched ogre. It doesn't make sense for a stretched gnome. It's just too ridiculous. You have to take the base points of biology. You have to examine the biology of the creature. A lot of people go, oh, it's science, do whatever you want. No, son. You got to look at it like that to have believability. So look at the creature scientifically. We got to examine its biological makeup. Then we examine the society that surrounds it. How does the gnomish society impact? Now, there should be a vast array that you could take in there, but within there, it's not limitless. Just like being a human, you're not limitless. Like, if elves was real, like a rift just opened up and there was like elves and trolls and Pegasus and stuff, it would just be different. They would be different. They wouldn't be inside the same spectrum of possibility to human. There might be certain things that match up closely or even identical in certain small areas, but there would be things that were just completely different about them. They would in fact not be human. A gnome is always a gnome. It's within a spectrum of being a gnome, and hopefully this is making at least a degree of sense. If you're just playing a drow elf, right, but you're telling people it's a gnome, well, no, you're playing a drow elf, or you're just playing a human. You know, if it's the same thing over and over again, but in just different races and bodies, there's not much there. One of the greatest challenges as a role player you can take is to play something that isn't human. Even playing an elf or a dwarf is an impossibly difficult challenge to some people. I think it is a mountain that you can climb and you can plant your flag on top of. People sometimes forget that an elf is amazingly complex and completely different from a human being, and a tremendous role-playing challenge just to play an elf right out of the book of Dungeons and Dragons, right out of Savage Worlds books, right out of Palladium Fantasy, Shadowrun, Earthdawn. Elves are in every kind of fantasy game and other types of games as well. There are games that essentially have elves that are a bunch of sci-fi type games that essentially have elves, whether they call them elves or not. You have elves all over the place, but they're not human beings. That needs to always be taken into account. This is extremely important because this is a bad mistake I see people make a lot of times, and it kills the character off. And a lot of times people are like, I don't really enjoy my character too much because, yeah, I guess I couldn't really do that with an orc. That didn't really make sense. You know, that was a little too far. He's not an orc. I'm just playing an elf, and I'm calling it an orc. Now, you could be raised in elf society. You could have these, but you still had to have that little bit, right? That little bit of orc in there. It doesn't even take much. It's just a little bit, you know. It's a little ounce from that biological aspect. It should come up, and that can be really amazing. Particularly like if you lull somebody in that false sense, like send them up for like 8 game sessions. Like, oh, he's just playing an elf. Say call himself an orc. He's just trying to get that strength bonus. But he want to have an elf culture, and he's playing an elf. I mean, it's a pretty good elf. But and then all of a sudden, boom! That feral orc comes out. That untrusting, that hateful, that malicious, that vicious, that bully. Whatever it is, you bring that aspect out at a certain time when you wanted to produce it, and you can blow people away. Like, oh, dude, I thought your role playing was like mediocre, but that was actually spectacular because now that it puts everything in perspective, right? It also puts perspective, and the players might not know how good of a job someone's doing, whether it's a PC or an NPC, whatever it is. When you finally pop it, then you can get some great value out of it that way. But an orc always still has to be an orc. It has to be an orc. It can't be something else. It could try and push and do everything it could, and that could be great. You know, that's a great character you can make right there. The orc that is an orc that is trying to be an elf. You know, trying to get the serenity and the calmness and the meditation, and he's trying to do all that. Like you can see, like he's just failing because he can't be an elf. But damn if he isn't trying, and he tries to try, and maybe way build down the line, he succeeds for just a minute, right? He has like just like a moment of that perfect sort of Buddhist clarity, and everything's white. He's just like, and then it's not again. And then how does he react? You know, is he furious? Is he so happy because he's achieved, you know, perfect Zen elf for a moment? You understand? And that makes it such a compelling character. So, I was raised by elves. I'm just no. Oh, my elf was raised by dwarves. So he's just battle axe. He's a dwarf. Like, dude, you want elf stats. You want the bonuses for an elf, and you're trying to get the culture of a dwarf. You're trying to be a dwarf. This an elf, and that sucks. Now, it's awesome if you're still an elf. You understand? It's really sometimes it's the tiniest lines that separate trash from treasure, and you want to be a treasure in the chest of your game master. You want to bring him something spectacular. You want all the other players. Now, when you're playing that character, hopefully you're understanding along for the ride here, understanding that it needs to be at the core, at the nucleus of what it is. And you need to be able to understand and define what something is, what the biological ramifications of being that organism, how that would produce, where that would affect its different responses, and how you would take a different society and overlay that. So we have the biology of an orc, right? But then we have orc society laid over that. So the orc is raised in a different society. We still have that biology. So how does that biology manifest into a different society? How much of what orc society is inherent How much of it is unchangeable? And how much of it is changeable? And where are those lines? And that could be great questions to answer yourself. And they're a hell of a lot better than how can I spend my gold to buy a +3 bastard sword? They're much more interesting questions to answer, and the answers can be rewarding in the terms of vast hordes of experience, a role-playing enjoyment. That can be a tremendous reward when it's not just time allocated incorrectly. And I see people so often make characters incorrectly in terms of they are allocating their time. They're spending time, but they're not allocating in the best positions. So when you examine at the core what that species is, what that type is, what that even to a lesser degree what a class is, or what a vampire or a werewolf is, what makes them that. So how far can we push the envelope? There's a point where you cannot push the envelope anymore in any type of thing that you're doing, because you simply just aren't that anymore. Now, like in a D&D game, it's not so, like with a class, you could the class itself kind of limits you, and perhaps rightfully so, perhaps wrongfully so at times, but you can only have this many skill points, and you can really only choose these skills, or you could get a few out-of-class skills for so much, or in a Pathfinder, you don't get this extra bonus, just kind of open you back towards these skills, or, if you start multi-class, you don't get these extra bonuses, and you still have access to all these weapons, so you're still inherently, like, you could have been a fighter with like a 10 strength and like a high intelligence and all this stuff, but you still know how to use pole arms. You can still pick up that pike and drive it through a man, and you should. So the moral of the story is take what is the essence of something, distill it in your mind, and figure it out. In fact, you might even want to run it by your game master and say, well, what do you think? And they might have their own interpretations, and then you can engage in argument about that and try to get down into a real understanding, because you're talking about the essence of something. Why isn't orc an orc and not a human? If it is just a human, it needs to just be a human. If it's just it's not just a cosmetic difference. You understand, the brain works differently. The emotional grid of the creature works differently. It processes differently than we do. We cannot truly, perfectly understand that, but we can truly and perfectly understand that it is different. So it comes down to a process of trying to figure out where those differences are, how they are, what's heightened, what's dulled. Those are great places to start. And where the sociological aspect comes in, where the psychological aspect comes in, what is the soul of the creature besides that? The soul of something forged by the demon kings on long days ago to create this race. How good can we really be? Where's the shadow that still looms in there of playing this this Cambian type of individual, that it's not going to be all the way wholesome. It can't be your pure beacon of goodness, but it can still do good. It can still push. It can still work against its nature, but it loses battles too. You understand? And that's where the real greatness comes in, because a lot of times people, particularly with the video game mentality, they get hardwired to win, and they forget that losing can be the best win of all. Particularly when you lose a battle with yourself, you lose the morals. If you just win, what do you have to do? Like you've killed off yourself. You've killed off your angle. You've killed your character off. Not literally, you don't get to play the character anymore, but he doesn't mean anything. What drama? If you read that in a book, you're like, oh, I don't care about this character. It's the losses that define you. It's the losses that make you better. You're going to playing a character, right? I have a great concept for a character. I want to play a paladin that was like a human or an elf or maybe whatever kind of race. It doesn't really matter. And he's trapped by ghouls and just ripped apart and becomes a ghoul. And it's like a ghoul for like a gimmick of time. I mean, like a century. Like he's an old ass ghoul. And these thoughts start coming into his mind, little splintered fragments of his own psyche. Like he took what he was, and it was a mirror, right? He just threw it across the ground and broke it up and kicked most of it out there, but there's still a little bit of light reflecting off of those pieces of broken glass, off those shards, and that's his memory, it's his past, and he remembers faces, and it's all of a sudden he's not just a ghoul, he becomes kind of like aware, and then he becomes kind of a bit more aware, and he becomes aware enough of his God, and he starts praying for forgiveness. Did he do something wrong? Well, he's done horrible things. He's been affected, and that was by his own weakness, a weakness of the flesh, just like he was a man that couldn't hold off his need to drink and imbibe spirits. and he become a drunkard. Well, that's a disease, right? But that's his fault at the same time. And the same thing with a ghoul. He has eaten the flesh he's consumed. He's done all the things you would associate with a ghoul, and perhaps even more horrible things. But he didn't know. So he's filled and racked with guilt and shame. And that shame and guilt and shame are horrendously powerful things. And those are his gravity points. And they pull him back to being whatever he was before. So we have that aspect. And then he works. You know, put a helmet on, nail it to his face, so you think he can't be just eating people. But then there's that time. And we work, man. We work for produced game after game after game after game after game. He does not slip up. He does not. He beats the challenge, beats the challenge, beats the challenge, beats the challenge, and then he doesn't. And then he doesn't. You understand? And it's in that moment that the character's made awesome. And beating the challenge, who cares? But when we beat it, when we wrestle with it, when we barely slip by, and then we fail, that's where it's great. So when you're playing against that type, allow yourself to fail, and then become immersed in that type. And when you play that, when you produce that, then the players are going to look at you and go, oh, that was amazing. And the people, oh man, you did a great job. You know, that's what you want to hear, man. You don't want to hear, oh, I got a +3 loss. You want to hear, man, you did a great job, man. You were a pleasure to play with. Or the game master, particularly, to be, oh man, that was wonderful. You really made me happy. That really made the game great. How you popped that. We just thought what you was doing was kind of but you popped it. You understand? Because that's believability. You have to make the thing real. So to be the thing, you have to be the thing. You can push it as far as you can, but you can't spin it all the way around. You can't make a draw off a human. It's not. And if it comes across as a human, it's a failure. But it can come across as a human up until it doesn't. And then it can be a smashing success. Remember, it's all incredibly small lines where things fail and where things succeed. So that's a community service message to you. And let me know in the comments below, brother. Let me know, dude, what you think. Let your main man know, brother, what you think about playing against types, brother. About taking the nucleus, the core, the soul of something, dude. And letting that be expressed through the game and what we're talking about here. So I look forward to hearing your comments below.